Hi, everybody. This is going to be chapter 6 in our ethics textbook. Trying something a little different here and not just narrating the PowerPoints. I decided to talk a little bit. So that's what we're going to be doing. This chapter 6 is entitled Firefighters and Emergency Medical Services Code of Ethics. And I think I told you before that this textbook, I believe, is written by some law enforcement folks. I'm not crazy about it at this point. I don't know how you feel about it. I'd certainly welcome your input. It is a much easier reading than the textbook that we had previously and much more applicable to our field, but I'm still not feeling the love for the book, so we may change it later on. Sorry to tell you that. But anyway, it's what we have for this semester, and so we're going to be dealing with it. Chapter 6, chapter 5 was about law enforcement ethics, and this is about firefighters and emergency EMS type folks and the ethics that they deal with. And the author spends a lot of time talking about Ben Franklin. And you'll see the first few slides when you go through the PowerPoint and when you read, he talks a lot about Ben Franklin. And it was kind of interesting because just recently, and I posted this link on the website for you to look at, there was an article in Fire Rescue entitled Ben Franklin's Lessons for First Responders. And so kind of along the same lines, I posted it to our Facebook page, but Ben did have a lot to say about fire and emergency services and what we do. Of course, he was one of our country's founding fathers, and he was the father of the American Fire Service, I believe is how they refer to him now. So he did publish a newspaper. He was a scientist, inventor, community organizer, and a bit of a philosopher. So some of his more famous sayings, well done is better than well said. No gains without pain. How many times have we heard that? Haste makes waste. God helps those who help themselves. Fish and visitors smell in 3 days. Not sure about that last one, but of course he is the one that said an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And truthfully, he was not talking about health. He was talking about fire prevention of all things. Imagine that. So he did came from his work as a community organizer as the brave man of the first volunteer fire brigade in Philadelphia. So he did have a lot to say about the fire service. He had a big say in that. Your book does talk about a lot of the things that he said, and I'm not going to get into those. I think I'm just going to let you read that article, and then there will be a discussion question posted for you to answer as well. So, but we do get a lot of our core values from some of Ben Franklin's writings and some of his sayings. When we look at firefighter core values, I know in the department that I used to work for, in our training center, they had flags made that had words on them, and they went down the hall of the training center. And it had actually been taken from another fire department, and that's okay because somebody took it from us. That's the way we do. But there was a lot of core values, integrity, some of the words that Ben Franklin some of the things that Ben Franklin said: temperance, silence, order, resolution, frugality, industry, sincerity. And these are some of the virtues that he believed was a desirable way to live. If we kind of translate those to fire service today, there is a long list of core values: integrity, honor, pride, respect, duty. All of those types of words are part of the core values that the fire service does live by. But one of the things that I found, I actually did a research paper, and I can't remember if I told you all about this before. If I have, I apologize. I did a research paper for my executive fire officer, and it was on the values-driven fire department. And it was kind of I guess, a visionary concept in that I see a vision as maybe not, it's going to take a long time to get there. But many organizations today, private organizations, are driven by their values. And that the fire department would be no different than that. And the whole goal was to create a value statement and to create these core values, and define them and then live by them. And that the whole concept would be that there would be a lesser need for all these policies and procedures and SOPs because the values would drive what we do. And yeah, it was kind of a free thinking sort of thing, but I loved doing the paper. I actually did a poll of my department and asking them what those values, they had to rank the most important ones. There was lots of different words. And what I figured out after getting that poll back is that it's all in how you define the term. What does it mean? What does honor mean? And what does duty mean? One that came into particular under challenge, I guess, was the term pride. We've all heard pride goeth before a fall, but we are all very proud of our service. And so that's why we look nice in our uniforms. Our trucks are always clean because we're proud of what we do. And so it's all in how you define the term. And this is where the recommendations from the paper were that, you can, but it's not going to be successful. One individual, such as a chief, that says, this is the department's core values. When you look at that list and say, those aren't my core values. Now, what happens is that in this organization, if a person is hired that perhaps doesn't have those same values, they will leave. And that's what happens in organizations where the values are not aligned with that of the organization. But I think the key to all of this is, how do we define these things? What do these values look like to the public or to each other? If I respect you, what does that look like? How can we describe that? How can I look at an organization and say they're very respectful of each other, or they value respect, or they value honor and duty and pride and integrity and a lot of those other things. So that's what it's about, to be values. And actually, there's an article that I think I'm going to use for our discussion that I just saw the other day, like this week, entitled, it was about something called an integrity interview. And so this kind of lends itself to that whole ethics concept and the ethics and values concept. So your book gives an example of fire department core values from San Marcos Fire Department in North San Diego County, California. They had core values of leadership, and then they do kind of define that a little bit. We value the development and application of all personnel's leadership skills. We believe that leadership occurs at all levels of the organization and is everyone's responsibility. They had integrity. They have safety, competence, and customer service. These are their core values. We treat all customers with respect, dignity, fairness, and compassion. We are responsive to the changing needs of the community. So those are some of the things that we can't just say honor, duty, integrity, pride, trust, respect. We have to flesh those things out for our organization. And it's really hard to copy somebody else's because it's different people serving different people. When we have, you can use it as a template, but you have to think about the people that you serve and the people that you work with and the people that are there. And so going back to this whole developing this value statement, it is, while it should be a job of the department, a committee, a task force, or a focus group that's comprised of all different ranks and lengths of service. If the chief wants to say these are our core values, this is what I want the list to look like, that's one thing. But you should be able to, as a group, you need to flesh that out and form that and to be able to say, this is what it looks like to us. And then you have to compare that to ethics. There's another example from this same, the same jurisdiction. They have their code of ethics and values in the policy and procedure manual. Does your department have that? Look at it and see. If I remember right, where I used to work, it was, because I looked at it for this paper, it was like very small. It was more of like what happened to you if you violated the ethics, but nobody could really tell you what the ethics were. But they do have, as a representative of North County Fire Protection District, I will be ethical in practice. This value looks like. And they have I'm on page 117 in your book. I am trustworthy. I am truthful. I make impartial decisions. I am fair. So they look like they're ethical, professional, service-oriented, fiscally responsible, organized, communicative, collaborative, progressive. So those are some of the ethics. And again, I'm going to let you read that. There's an example of firefighter code of ethics that came from the IAFF as well. There's also, and I put the link for this on your website, a firefighter code of ethics that was developed by the National Society of Executive Fire Officers. And this came from the United States Fire Administration website. If you've ever taken a course, it's in every course manual there that they talk about. Ethics comes from the Greek word ethos, which means character and what that means. And then they have a firefighter code of ethics as well. And like I said, I've posted that. Always conduct myself on and off duty in a manner that reflects positively, accept responsibility, support fairness, and value diverse thoughts. Avoid situations that could adversely affect the credibility, be truthful and honest, and on and on. Again, I'm not going to read that to you there. So I think what it's saying is there's not a whole lot of difference between a code of ethics for law enforcement and fire service. We are just held, I think, as professions, public safety are held to a higher standard, as it should be. Some of you may disagree with that because we are just human, but we all hear about these mistakes that people make, and they're going to make them, and there is unfortunately a penalty to pay for making those types of mistakes. The IAFC, the International Association of Fire Chiefs, has a Fire Chiefs Code of Ethics. And I haven't posted these to the website, but I will search and post the links so that you can look at these. They're also in your book if you want it there. But I find sometimes that the preamble information is more informative than the actual document itself. It does include the same ethics and morality issues as the one that's designed for firefighters, but with a little more accountability for the overall performance of the department. On page 121 in your book, there is an emergency medical technician / paramedic code of ethics. I am looking to see where the source of that, and it does not tell me on this page right here, but I would be curious. I would be curious to know. I'm going to flip over another page and see if I can find, number 11. The Code of Ethics as adopted by the National Association of Emergency Medical Technicians. So, but it is, of course, a little bit different because it does have to do with providing services, knowledge and skills. I like this to use social media in a responsible and professional manner. That should probably be in all of our code of ethics. I hope that it is. And then in your book, there is a section about, is it illegal or almost ethical? And so that's another section for you to read there. So there's not a whole lot of examples in here. And that's where I would encourage you in a group to discuss some of these examples, because that's where it's going to come from. I will say that we, I recently had an experience here at the college where, and I may have shared this with you before. A person was fired or let go from a position because they crossed the line. Now where was that line defined? In the policies and procedures, it wasn't defined. He had been a longtime volunteer here, but my defense for him was, where's the line? How do we know? How can we say he crossed that line? But I think for us in the fire service, we know where that line is. And again, I apologize if I have told you this before. I attended a presentation one time. It was actually at an EMS conference, and there was a slide on the screen that had a line, a horizontal line drawn through it. And the speaker said, this may be the most important slide in this presentation. And we're all kind of looking at each other. And he said, there's the line, don't cross it. And so interesting, because we do know where that line is. And sometimes we do cross it without thinking about it, without thinking about the ramifications of our actions. I remember being in a house fire one time, and I was doing the investigation afterwards. A lady had been rescued from that fire, so it was a big deal. It was also during the day, which meant there was a lot of people. There was the sheriff's office was there, the media was there, and as me and a firefighter were exiting the building, we found her wig. She had lost her wig in the rescue, and which is fine. But it was laying right inside the door, and he was kind of a comedian in the department. And he said, I could put that on and walk out. I said, yeah, you could. And we both just looked at it, and we stepped over it and walked out the door. That was the line. Yeah, it would have been funny. He was a cut up anyway. People would have laughed, but that was not the right thing to do. That was not being not being customer service oriented. That was not being kind, considerate, and all those other things that we value. So we know where the line is. It may be at different places for different people, and that's why we need to spell this out in our departments so that everybody knows where the line is. And when people are new coming into the department, we can show them where that line, well, this is what this means. If you say if duty is a value, what does that mean? Describe that to me. Help me as a new recruit understand my duty and how to live up to that value. So there's lots of resources for you. Read the chapter. It's pretty short. Look at the PowerPoint. I did post the article about Ben Franklin. I posted the Firefighter Code of Ethics, and I'm going to post that other article that relates to the integrity interview, and use that as our discussion question for this week. So again, kind of not a lot of meat in this particular chapter, but I think we all know, I would encourage you to seek out in your department. Do you have a code of ethics? Do you have a statement in your SOPs about ethical behavior and what that means? Because it's really hard to hold people accountable, I think, when we haven't at least tried to describe it to them in some form or fashion. So if you have any questions, let me know. I hope you guys have a great week. Thanks.